Good morning everyone, I'm Sue from Mingchuan University. So here is Bill from icrt. So we are going to say something about the Bill Jazz Show.
Hey.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah. Hi, good morning to you, Sue. I've been doing the jazz show for a long time, maybe 28 years, kind of long. It's one of the longest running programs
in icrt.
In icrt, probably in Taiwan, certainly on the radio. 28 years going on 29 years. I started it in 1985 about, and before that, or 1986. Before that, I had a classical music program because I had just gotten onto icrt. I just joined icrt, and they were just kind of putting it together. And the general manager said, "Look, we've got a opening Sunday night. We've got 2 hours. I don't know what to put in there. Can anybody come up with something?" So I said, "I can do it. I can do classical music." I'd never done classical music, right? But I have a music education background, so I know the history of classical music, and I know theory and form and analysis and that sort of thing. Well, it wasn't a very good program. The music was great, but I wasn't so good because I had never done it before. And as I listened to the program, I realized I talked too much. Because people who listen to classical music,
they just listen to the music.
They know the history. So when I went into a whole thing about Johann Sebastian Bach was born in 1685, and you know, everybody who's listening, I know that. Just play the Bach composition, right? And so that only lasted about 6 months, and then the general manager said, "Look, we already have a lot of classical music programs." At that time, icrt, every night from 9 o'clock until midnight was classical music. It wasn't pop or rock. So I said, "Well, what can I do? How about jazz?" So the general manager said, "All right, yeah, let's put in a jazz program." Now, I had never done that either. So I started from scratch.
Okay.
You can see, right, from the very beginning. And
is that hard for the... Like, you need to make a lot of research? No.
Yeah, some research, absolutely. But again, since I have a background in music, it was a little bit easier, perhaps. But you're right about the research, because I didn't grow up listening to jazz. And certainly at the university, I didn't really know anything about jazz at all. In fact, I got into jazz much later in life when I decided to find out about jazz. What's jazz? So I bought a couple of albums, and that's jazz, huh? And then I started reading more and playing more. And actually, by doing the jazz program, I taught myself jazz music, right? I could never get a job as a jazz DJ today like I did then, because they would say, "What's your background in jazz production?" And I would have to say, "Well, I've never done it." All right,
just try something new.
But at that time in icrt, back in the 1980s, everything was changing, and they were doing this and doing that, so I got in at the right time. So I began the jazz program, and that's been going pretty much for the last, as I say, long time.
Oh, that's a good...
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. It's always interesting to do something that's fun. Right. It's
like you're enjoying to deliver the music to the audience, so you enjoy yourself too. Right?
Yeah, right. I can. In fact, I just did the first hour of my show for this coming Sunday night. It's in. We used to say it's in the can, but we don't use tape anymore, right? 1/4 inch, 12-inch reels of tape to put in a can. So that phrase we don't use anymore. We have to say, "I put it in the digital domain" or something, right? It's all in a computer. The computer system. So, what else would you like to know about?
We would like to know about how do we make a good show.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I'm always thinking about that myself. And when I started doing this program, it was a little bit more difficult because I had very few albums. There were no CDs, right, when I started the show. I only used albums. So it was a little more difficult to put it together. But now I have a lot of CDs in different styles. I think that one of the ways I put the show together is a little bit maybe free form. I don't necessarily sit down during the week and say, okay, next week I'm going to play this, this, and this. What I do is I bring in a bunch of CDs like this.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then I always change my mind.
Yeah.
All right. I'll look at this CD. I'll look at that CD, and I think I don't want to start with that one. What should we start with tonight? Let's start with something a little up tempo, something a little bit.
So just up to your feeling.
Up to my feeling, exactly.
Okay.
Right, up to my feeling. So once I put that in the CD player and record it, now I have to follow it with something else, of course. So is it going to be a similar tempo? A jazz selection in the same style? Is it going? If the first selection is only 4 people, a quartet, do I continue with a small group or do I make it a big band? There's many ways to go with this, right? But you want it to be, you want it to have a flow. Kind of. You don't want it to be too jerky to go from this to something that's, you know. So the listener, because nobody listens like this, right? They're driving their car. They're
doing something else.
They're doing something else, right? So it's not, I want it to be good background music, but interesting background music. So I don't play, for example, fusion music, or sometimes called contemporary music. And an example of that would be Kenny G. All right, some people like Kenny G, right? And he's very popular. He's made a lot of money, and he has many albums out. But he doesn't fit the style of music that I play in my program. Okay? So my style is, I guess you could call it mainstream jazz, not smooth jazz, not contemporary jazz. So I limit myself a little bit. The interesting thing about jazz, I think, is that the history of recorded jazz is almost only 100 years old, right? Jazz expanded because of the invention of the phonograph, which helped spread jazz. So I'm dealing with an industry that's only 100 years old, as opposed to my classical program, which went back hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Of course, no recordings, but going back to the Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, even before that sometimes. All right.
So can you show us that how to make?
I can do that. All right.
So normally you play how many songs in 1 hour in your show? You have 2-hour show, right?
I have a 2-hour program. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this hour that I've just recorded, I have only 6 songs.
6 songs.
Yeah, because jazz compositions can last longer than pop. Maybe maybe in the FM studio where they play pop music, maybe a song will be 3 minutes. Or 4 minutes.
So how about your?
Jazz music, jazz compositions can be anywhere. They can be that short, 3-4 minutes, especially if they're old. Back in the days when there wasn't CDs, the songs were shorter, right? 3-4 minutes. CDs, jazz musicians can make them quite long. So jazz songs are often 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 minutes.
Whoa.
Miles Davis even recorded one that lasts maybe an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of variety. Going to this first hour.
Yeah.
It's not an hour. It's only 53 minutes.
Okay.
Because there's commercials. Other promos we call them, and other things in there, right? So when I put this program together, all I do is put in 53 minutes of music in my introductions.
It's accurately 53 minutes.
It's pretty close, because today with the computers I can see exactly how much time I have. It's a good point too, by the way, how much time and how accurate. I try to get it to 53 minutes within a minute. And that means that sometimes I have to play a song at the end of the first hour and at the end of the second hour.
So they can cut it.
Well, so that it can be faded out.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that means that I have to pick a song that fits the time. Maybe it's not really the song I want to play, but I only have, let's say,
just left like
4 or 5 minutes, right? So I have to play a song that it's kind of complete.
Okay, I get it.
And I can't use a song at the end of the first hour that has a singer. I don't, because you don't want to cut the singer off. So it's instrumental at the end. All right, so I can play the introduction. All right. This is the beginning of my Sunday night program. And the first thing you'll hear is my theme song. I play this theme song every Sunday night, and I've used it for
Before
years.
you start your show?
And when I start it, I don't just start speaking. I have a little music, right?
Yeah.
A little theme song. Good evening, welcome along. You're listening to Jazz Flavors here on ICRT. I'm your host, Bill Thiessen. This show comes your way every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, lasting all the way up until 10. We begin our program tonight with flugelhornist Clark Terry. The CD is called Having Fun. It goes back a few years. He's joined by Red Holloway, who doubles on tenor and alto. Major Holly plays bass. In fact, he sings right along with his bass when he plays his solos. The piano player is John Campbell. The drummer is Lewis Nash. We'll have a couple of selections off of this CD, starting with a Terry composition. It's kind of a blues number, I guess. The title is called Mumbles. Do not try to understand any of the words. Mumbles. All right, let me go ahead just a little bit because he sings kind of on this. It's called scat singing. All right, he uses his voice, but he doesn't say any real words. All right, and I think it's kind of funny. Clark Terry is a funny guy. She ain't on the house, they want to live up the bound. She ain't going to allow the bound, found to be on the level. She had a heard the bear to scare the evil down, the bear to bear, they won't live down, they won't live it. If you try to listen and figure out what he's singing, you'll go crazy because there's no words, right? Is it? Yeah. All right.
But you feel some kind of enjoying the smooth. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is quite clever. All right. Not everybody can do this.
Yeah.
All right. Because it changes all the way through the song, and so he's ad-libbing this sound, and it's called in jazz terminology, it's called scatting. Let me move it ahead here a little bit.
Okay.
Toward the end, it sounded a little bit like. This is the end. Anything for the harness going on, everything on the dance, and the spring for the spam la hand is klar, for the spring for the hand is kleiner and the hand is klar. Peace and love. Clark Terry.
Whoa.
The tune was called Mumbles, and that's indeed what he did. He mumbled his way through that, although toward the end it sounded a little bit like Swedish mumbles to my ears. I'll tell you, good jazz musicians can take any kind of a song and do something with it. For example, we could take the theme song from a TV children's show like the Flintstones, and I'll bet Clark Terry could have a ball with it, like the Flintstones theme. This is the same guy, Clark Terry. Now he's playing a TV show, in a theme from a children's cartoon theme song. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're a yabba dabba or something like that. He takes that simple melody and it becomes this great, interesting jazz composition. Here's a little bit of it. Now what you heard at the beginning of this, you heard the theme, you heard the melody, Flintstones. Now they play that 12 or 32 bars, and then right now he's not playing the theme straight. Now he's improvising on it. He's changing that theme around. It becomes this interesting jazz composition. All right, let me move on to the next one. All right. All right, this is the end of that song, Meet the Flintstones. I don't introduce the next one. I just move into it.
sometimes you no need to introduce.
That's right. Yeah.
You will say in the end of the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I always at some point tell everybody the name of the tune, who the musicians are, and the name of the CD that it's on, right?
Oh, so
Alright.
basically just say some, like, not more than 12, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then just play the music.
That's right. Just as you heard as I introduced the first two compositions, because it was mumbles, and then it was the same guy doing something else. So I had to talk a little bit about it. This makes a nice segue, move from the end of the last tune into this vocal, right? So
you basically put the CD in where?
CD 1, right?
Here.
CD 1, CD 2.
Yeah,
And then on the board I can
record
fade
from this mic.
I speak into this mic.
Yeah.
And this is CD 1. This is CD 2. So I can fade this one down, right? I don't have to stop and change CDs.
So just like this.
Yeah, right.
Fade out and fade in. Oh,
right.
okay.
So, as I say, a lot of times practically every time, I guess, I don't really have an idea of what I'm going to play, what I'm going to record until I start. That means that when I did this first segment, I was recording this this particular CD, and when it was recording, I then went and looked at my other CDs thinking, what should be next? So then I found something that would fit after this song, put it in, and recorded it.
Okay, so lastly, the question about this jazz show. Can you say something about how to host a program, the skill, or what preparation do they need to have?
First of all, if somebody wants to be the host of a music program, you have to decide what you're interested in, right? Now, like I told you, I have a music background, but I'm not interested in heavy metal.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Or I'm not interested in a lot of things. I am interested in classical music and jazz. And I could be the host of a blues program. If ICRT wanted to do blues, I could easily do that, because jazz and blues are very closely linked.
Okay.
Right? Blues came first, jazz kind of grew out of the blues experience. You could do a whole program on the history of jazz, history of the blues, how it started, the black experience in the U.S. in the late 1800s, New Orleans, the center of jazz, how it spread from there. But that's not our topic today, is it? Our topic today is only how to be a host of a jazz program.
Yeah.
All right. So once you found, or once you know what kind of music you're interested in, you have to, of course, be connected with a radio station. Or nowadays you could do it on the internet, right? You could have your own little podcast or your own little program. And we never had that, of course, until a few years ago. And that I think would be a great way to start, because nobody's going to listen.
Yes.
Right at the beginning.
You just start to practice it yourself first.
Exactly. You could put it together, and then the important thing with all of this is to listen. All right, to sit back and that's why I speak less and less, because in the early days, as I mentioned earlier, I thought I spoke too much, and I thought, I could cut that. Even now, even when I did this program, when I went back and listened to it to QC it, I thought, I don't need to say that. Gone. Then I listened to it a little more. Okay, I went back. Those words, I don't need. Cut them out. So I can record on here. I also edit. All right. I take out my mistakes, and I always make mistakes. Right? Oh, okay. And that's the difference between recording it and doing it live. All right. There's a different feeling. Sometimes you make more mistakes recording it. I don't know why that is. Than if I were to do it live. If I did it live, I would prepare a little more. Yeah. Because I can't ad lib. Yeah, right. I can't be looking around for CDs if it's a live program. I have to know what I'm going to play. Secondly, I have to know what I'm going to say. Okay. You can't do a live program, just sort of ad-libbing everything, especially if you're giving facts, the names of the musicians and that sort of thing. You want it right out there in front so you don't kind of stumble around trying to find it. So you will be recording in Monday morning and then play it in Sunday night, right? That's right. I do my show Monday morning and Tuesday morning. It takes 2 mornings to do it for the next Sunday night programming, right? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill, for your
We're all
share.
done? I just
Yeah.
got started. I got so
really?
much to tell you.
Really?
Yeah, all right, all right.
Okay, thanks.
You don't want to edit all this stuff. Thank you, dear.
No.
Yeah. Nice to
Okay,
chat with you.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Sunday night, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on icrt.
Jazz show.
Jazz show, right.
Okay. Thank
Yeah. I don't know if you want to get the screen or me or what, but ready? Alma?
Okay.
All right. Good morning at 7 o'clock. Welcome to the ICRT Morning Report. I'm Bill Thiessen with Ellie Mears and Gavin Phipps. In the headlines today, the U.S. and Russia are preparing for high-level talks on the situation in Syria. China's premier warns the EU over solar and telecom probes. In sports, Venus Williams lost yesterday to 40th-ranked Ursula Radwanska of Poland at the French Open. Weather forecasters tell us mostly cloudy skies with showers or scattered thunder showers pretty much all across the island this afternoon. And we're looking at highs of 32 here in the Taipei and Taichung areas, also getting up to about 30 in Kaohsiung. Right now, though, it's 25 here in Taipei, 27 in Taichung, and 27 in Kaohsiung. ICRT News Time is 7:02.
So we are now here to telling you that how ICRT produced the news. So Bill, can you tell us that how you guys choose the news and where the news from?
Yeah, I can do that. All of our news comes from a company that we subscribe to called AP, Associated Press. At one time in ICRT, we had 3 news services: AP, Reuters, and UPI. They cost money. Now we're down to only 1 news service, AP. AP is out of Washington or New York, I can't remember, but it covers the world, all right? My job in the morning, when I come in, I get here at 5 o'clock. It takes me a solid 2 hours to prepare the 7 o'clock show. I have to prepare 22 minutes of international news, all right? 5 minutes of business and 5 minutes of sports, all right?
Okay.
And now
So
that,
it's 32 minutes.
well, that fits into the 1 hour segment, all right? Now, Gavin Phipps translates Chinese news into English, and that's another 5 minutes,
Okay.
all right? Ellie Mears comes in after that at 7:30 to recap the news, maybe a 3-minute repeat of a shorter version of the news. And then at the end of the hour, leading up until 8 o'clock, there are other programs like Earth and Sky, some short science programs and that sort of thing. So when I come in the morning, I open up this 7 a.m. desk. 7 a.m. desk, it's nothing there. Then I have to go and look for stories. So here's the AP.
Yeah.
AP, all right? I open that up. And right now, this is the title of stories.
Yeah.
All kinds of stories.
So they will update in time?
In time, yeah. They keep coming down. It never stops, right? It never
Okay.
stops.
So AP is the US news.
That's the U.S. version, right?
Okay.
Right. UPI is also U.S. Reuters comes out of London.
Okay.
All right. So I have to now go through all of the news and check stories.
Okay.
All right. Now I save them. If I want to do a story,
Yeah.
I drag it over here, or I drag it down into the 7 o'clock desk.
Okay.
All right. I'll move it down. That's one way to do it. So hold on a second. Now that I think about it, do you ever do something that you do all the time, but if you stop and think about it, you think, how do we do that? All right, I just did that.
Okay.
All right. So
You'll be reporting every day?
Yep, every day, Monday
Just
to Friday.
okay.
Monday to Friday in the morning. All right. So the stories come down. I look for the stories I think are important. Now I can look on this AP, but I also have other places I can look. I can go to the web, and I can find stories.
Oh.
And I try to look at as many different sources as possible, so I don't miss certainly any of the important stories. And if you look around, like different news organizations, of course you're going to see what the major stories are.
Yeah.
So I bring those down. Now my job is I'm not a reporter, right? I don't go downtown. I don't interview people.
Yeah.
I don't go to a fire or
Just
whatever.
read the news.
I read the news. I present the news. Now, the stories that come down from Reuters are the same stories that are used in newspapers. They're really long. I have to keep these stories maybe to 30 seconds or 40 seconds, so that means I have to edit and rewrite and then edit again. All right.
So you say that you have 22 minutes international news.
Yeah.
Basically, it's how many news inside the 22?
Oh, that's a good story. That's a good question. The whole thing, including the 22 minutes of international, 5 of business, and 5 of sports, can make up to almost 30 stories. So I have to do 30 stories, right?
So
and they're all new.
From 5 in the morning, you start research and then make it into summary?
Well, summary kind of, yeah, summary. And the news starts at 7, all right?
So on live,
right?
Yeah.
Right. The news is live, right?
Yeah.
Right. So my job is to choose the stories, edit the story, put them in the right order, and then I have to look for sound. We can go here, for example, to AP has a sound bank, we call it. And I can go, each of these is a different piece of sound. Some of it's 5 seconds, 8 seconds, and those are just sound bites.
Okay.
I mean, it could be President Obama just speaking for 5 seconds or 20 seconds, or anybody. There are also something we call a rap, and that means it's a reporter reporting. The reporter, in this case, let's see, he's talking about the tornado in Oklahoma. He introduces, I would introduce him just using this first sentence. And then I hit a button, and then he does 30 seconds. All right, and then it either ends.
Easy.
Well, that's the problem is that is easy. Yeah, it makes my job easier. But there's not that I don't use that many. All right.
Okay.
It's not like I can do 20 minutes of this, right?
Yeah.
That would be easy. So, yeah, I put all of this stuff together.
So this only soundbite and rap.
Yeah, sound bites and raps in this segment here. I look for them because it's always good to have a different voice.
Yeah.
You don't want the same voice plodding on and on and on, right?
Okay.
Yeah, right.
For us, right, it's hard to make summary in 2 hours to make 30 stories. So how do you make a summary so fast?
Well, all of these stories are newspaper style. That means that's why you can't use them, because they're only made for reading. If you said it out loud, you would sound strange, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you know about newspaper copy, newspaper stories, but the first paragraph always has everything in it. The lead is in it, right? But maybe there's 2 or 3 parts to it, and they'll have one sentence on this point, second sentence on that point, third sentence on that point. All right, and then they'll have what's called the attribution at the end, according to President Obama. We don't speak that way. We don't put the attribution. We say President. President Obama said today.
Okay.
Then you do the first sentence. Now maybe down in the copy somewhere there's a follow-up to that first sentence. All right, so you want to put that up. Now you can take the second sentence and move it down, and find a follow-up to that. So you have to really be able to move sentences and paragraphs around.
Okay.
All right, now you look at that, and you whack out everything you don't need. The question is always how much history. You have to write the story, edit the story, as if you were speaking to a teenager, not somebody with a big vocabulary. Simple. Small words, short sentences, action verbs.
In just show, you sound more relaxing, right? And then in news reporting, how do you sound like? Can you show?
I don't know if I want to do that. It's a good question, though, right? Because I always think it's the same kind of. But in news, it's a little more authoritative, we call it, right? If you do news, you have to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, I have to do that in jazz too, but it can be more relaxed, right?
Yeah.
And if I, you know, maybe I'll say, what I mean by that is, or I'll add something, and it's just an introduction. It's not factual. I mean, it's not a lot of facts. It's just minimal, let's say. But when you're doing the news, you just have to sound like you.
Do I purposely need to make my sound more lower?
A female voice always sounds better when it's low.
Yeah,
when it's low, right? Now, of course, we can't change our voices too much. Right?
Okay.
We have to work with what we've got.
Can't to be too high pitch.
If you could avoid that,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Otherwise, it gets the best female newsreaders do have low voices. Low voices. Now you can train your voice a lot, right?
So you will
how you breathe, how you speak, how fast you speak. I tend to speak too fast. All right, maybe I get caught up in the story.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So speak slower, lower, and then more like, how to say that? More. Can you just show us how to make a sentence? Like, how do you know that which one is spread in the between of the sentence?
All right, that's a good point that you brought up, because sometimes sentences are written way too long, way too long, and pretty soon the poor newsreader is coming to the middle and he's running out of breath.
No.
And you know,
Yeah,
so
it's
very important. It's very important to make short sentences. All right, and short paragraphs. Get to the point. I wrote some notes down here. If you don't mind,
Okay,
would you like me to just quickly go through these? I put down, read and understand your material. All right, don't do a news story that you don't know yourself, because it's going to come through in your voice. You're going to sound uncertain. You always want to sound like you know what you're doing. Re-edit if you're not sure. Figure it out. You're telling a story when you're doing the news, right? It's like I'm speaking to you now, right?
Yes.
Except in the news there's a microphone here, and I don't know who I'm speaking to because I'm all alone in this room.
Yeah.
So you want to make it pleasant for the person, because again, they're not listening to the radio like this, right? They're driving their car and they're doing anything, right?
Sounds like talking to the phone, like.
Well, even less so, because radio, these stories are only 30 seconds. So, for example, a business story, you can give the highlights. But if a businessman is actually listening and he gets interested, he's not going to go by my story in business news. He's going to go to Dow Jones or Bloomberg or some authoritative financial site to get the full information. My job is to alert him or to tell the story briefly. And if somebody wants more depth, that's what newspapers are for, or now the web is for. Your writing should be simple, clear. Don't use difficult words to pronounce, or any words that you have to send your listener to a dictionary. All right, because if I'm reading a newspaper and I don't understand a word or a sentence, I can go back. People can't go back, right? They can't do it over. The sound is gone. For example, a lot of stories come up with the word, maybe a French word, like rapprochement. All right, I know what it means, and maybe a lot of my listeners know what it means. But a lot of listeners don't know what rapprochement means, right? It's a technical word in a sense. When two different countries, let's say, that have been kind of fighting each other a little bit, and so they get together and they agree to some kind of an agreement. That's called a rapprochement, right? But there's a better way to say it. These two countries got together and signed an accord, right? Make it simple. Make it simple.
What else?
Don't begin a sentence with there are, or there will be, or there was, right? You don't even need that. Start out with what happened. There was an accident yesterday on Interstate 5. You don't need to start there was. So just start with an accident yesterday on I-5 claimed the lives or caused something, right?
Okay.
Take out everything you don't need, like the word yet. I would say you will never need the word yet in an English language news story. yet again. Just say again.
Again.
That kind of thing, right?
Okay.
You need to whack it out. Write the way you talk.
Okay.
All right? Don't use slang. For example, sometimes you'll read in a news story, they inked a contract. Inked means signed.
Mm-hmm.
Just say signed.
Oh.
Don't say they inked. That sounds, it's too slangy, right? Sometimes used in sports stories. And, you know, this basketball player inked a contract with the Seattle Supersonics or whoever. Shorten the word. Don't say he purchased an apartment. Say bought or buy. I'm planning to purchase. Why say purchase? You can shorten it up by saying the word buy. Right? Everybody knows buy.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't know purchase. Build instead of construct. Don't use construct when you can say build. Don't say the word stated. Use the word said.
Said. Oh,
President Obama stated today. It's too formal.
Too formal, yeah.
Too formal, right? All right, I said short sentences for breathing and clarity. Attribution. We talked about that briefly. In a newspaper copy, the attribution comes at the end of the sentence, right? According to President Obama, period. But we don't speak that way. Put it at the beginning. Here's some more words that you don't use. Don't say in order to. Just say to. For the reason that. You can take all that out and just say because.
Because.
All
Okay.
right, for the reason that because. Don't use technical jargon. Sometimes there are stories about the WHO, the World Health Organization, all right? The first time it comes up in your copy, you have to say the World Health Organization. You can't use WHO. A lot of people don't know it. But you don't want to, in the rest of the story, you don't want to be saying the World Health Organization, this, the world, then you can go to the WHO, right? But first you have to let everybody know what that means. Too many numbers. It's really confusing. I read a lot of business stories and I see copy that has the Dow Jones Industrial Average moved up 35.68 points to 13,589.20. Compared to yesterday's, you know, people are going, what?
Yeah. Too confusing.
It's too confusing, right? Radio is the worst for technical information. Anything to do with numbers, it's a killer. So you have to somehow simplify it. The Dow Jones was up slightly. You don't have to give the number, right?
Slightly.
Up a bit, up slightly, something like that. Round off the numbers. If it's 25.30, just make it 25. If it's 25.62, make it 26. Right, round up or round down. Get to the studio early enough. Read your story out loud. Then you will find, oh, I left that word out. Or I can take that out, all right? Editing is really critical. You mentioned the difference in sound. Sometimes it's important in news, for example, if you are reading a story about a plane crash and 68 people died. Well, it's a little bit serious, right? So you can't be kind of joking, right? Other stories you can be, right? If you're doing a story about a rock star or a birthday party or something like that.
Depends on the news, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Most news is the same. I mean, you're going to read it the same. You're telling the story. People don't care about you. They want to get the fact, right?
Yes.
The story. But some stories, let's say we can call them a zinger. They come at the very end. Maybe they're funny. Maybe they're cute, entertainment, whatever like that. Then you can change your voice style. If you're writing copy, double space, all right? Don't cram it together.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to see your copy. So write things out. Sometimes you have to give the name of a president of some country and you don't know really. It's hard. So write it out. Break it up into pieces. Nobody's going to see it. You don't have to, write it formally. And that's really important too. Things get too formal sometimes in news, and it becomes a little too stiff. It's a turnoff. In a sense, news is part of the entertainment. You don't want people to turn off the news.
Yes.
Right? You want people to listen. So, there's a balance between how informative and how stiff you want to make it or how goofy you want to make it. We got more. Do you want to continue? A little bit more?
So, lastly?
Lastly, she doesn't want to go on.
No. I mean, like, for my question is like between the news, so it will be like 2-second break. Like
No break.
No break.
You finish the sentence. Get a natural sound, authoritative, present tense, action, verbs. Attribution. That's all, the breath.
Oh,
Why do you need 2 seconds?
Maybe
don't.
to separate that I'm telling the...
Use your voice. Use your voice.
Okay. Okay.
And in other news, actually you don't need to say and in other news. A lot of phrases are wasted. For example, I do it myself. I start out every morning, like you just heard, in the headlines this morning. Headlines is actually a newspaper copy word. It's not a radio word. Lots of words we use, we don't need to use. In the top of the news today, well, I'm just going to read what's in the top. I don't need to tell anybody what's the top of the news because the first story is going to be the top of the news. Right? There's a lot of things, introductory things that you can get away. You don't need.
Okay.
Yeah. Simplify it. Really simplify it.
Okay. Thanks, Bill, for your sharing.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, obviously, as you can see, I could go on and on and on and just bore everybody to death. But,
No.
Thank you for giving me the sign.
No, you definitely give us many knowledge about radio report.
It's really interesting. I mean, I've done this for many, many years. Every morning I come in and I wonder, gee, what happened last night? What's new that I can tell everybody about today? Because for many people, I'll be the first one to read it, and when they listen to me, they'll have heard it for the first time, often, certainly in the morning. They're getting up, they're making breakfast, whatever they're doing. Right? They're in their car going to work. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love like how DJ broadcast. It's very cool, you know.
Well, thank you. Usually
work for like almost 30 years, right?
Yeah. This is my second life. Right. My first life I was a music teacher.
Oh, okay.
And I always wanted to do radio, so now I've done radio for a long time.
Yeah.
Now I'm waiting for the third part of my life. I don't know what's going to happen.
So maybe say something encouragement to the young generation.
The young generation. The young generation. If you have an interest in radio, remember, radio isn't sexy. Everybody who's sexy really wants to get on TV. This is the only person who wants to do radio, right? She should be on TV. Because nobody's ever going to see you. Your face isn't going to be known. And so it just is, but it's an interesting life. It's an interesting way to make a living. Not boring at all. And fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome, dear.
Thank you.